If you've seen any video in 2019, I'm sure you've come across the wipe or mask transition, where an object comes across the screen and either seamlessly or not so seamlessly transitions you from one scene into the next. This can be a very quick and easy, effective transition that I think is an essential building block to creating effects. Once you've mastered this, you can take it to very complex levels, and it keeps your audience captivated the entire time because before they know it, they're already into the next scene. There's a few situations where you can use a mask transition. First, we have a simple mask working with very easy objects. They range to more complex things like trying to mask out a person walking across the screen. I'll show you how to do both complex and a simple mask, and if you really just want to make that video transition, I'll show you how to do that in camera without even masking. No masking required. I know it sounds too good to be true, but this transition can actually be extremely easy. And then afterward, I will show you how to make any transition look a little bit better. When you're doing transitions, you really want to try and make sure that you are shooting for the transition just to make the back end of editing a lot easier on yourself. A lot of these transitions are done a very specific way, and at the very end, we will go over how to shoot specifically for this transition. If you don't have footage to learn this transition, don't worry, I got you. Click on the link in my description. I've attached some footage that I shot specifically for this video for you to use, and you can work alongside me to make sure that we get this done properly. Feel free to pause this video right now and download that while I open Adobe Premiere Pro. Masking has a few very different variations to it. First, we either start with a clip that has a maskable beginning, or you have an object that passes through the screen. In our first clip, we can see I'm running through a forest and there are a bunch of trees. One crosses through the frame. We did this intentionally, and it gives us an amazing opportunity to create a mask transition. If you're unfamiliar with masking in Premiere, the pen tool creates shapes out of points that we put in the frame. These points can be placed wherever, and we can remodel them by holding down and moving our cursor around. So as you can see, it doesn't have to be just straight lines here. We can do weird shapes if we want. We make a few points, and then when we are happy with our outline, we click on the original key and it creates our shape. As you can see, everything outside of the mask is cut out. If you want to do a mask the other way, you can come over here and click inverted. You can use the mask to cut out whatever shape you had just made. I'm just going to go delete this mask. You can do pre-assigned shapes like an ellipse here. So you can drag these sides if you want. If you hover over it, you can rotate it, or you can make a perfect rectangle. So you could drag this around, add extra spots if you want. I know we're not using it for any specific reason at this moment, but it is such a powerful tool. For this transition, we are working with a linear object just to get the basics down before we move into a more complex wipe. So let's go to our clip, and for this tutorial, we are going to set markers by using the letter M. We're going to set a marker for where our mask is going to start and where our mask is going to end. The end point is the first frame where our object is completely in our frame. It is the first frame that is going to require any sort of masking. So I am going to set a marker on our clip there. Then we will move forward, and it is almost out. Now it is officially out of the frame. Set a marker there. To start this process, I like to go to the middle of the clip and find a relatively complex balance between the start and the end of the object and what its shape is. This way we can make an accurate mask that stays consistent the entire time. This is our program window, also known as our working frame. We can zoom in and out of our clip here to ease the process of making adjustments around it. If we set to 50%, it's too big. Let's go to 25% on this one. We're going to set a mask point well above our frame here and well below our frame. And we're going to drag our keyframes way outside the boundaries here just to give our mask some extra room. And there we go. There is our first mask. Awesome. So now we are going to use a keyframe to mark our point here. A keyframe is a stored value at a specific point in time. We set this to let the mask know that at this very moment, we want it to have this exact shape. We set multiple keyframes when we want a specific calculated change over time. Now go back to the first marker that we put down. And we still want the rest of our frame here, so we're going to drag our keys way out this way. Then we will go one back to where there is no mask. We left a bunch of space here. you can just throw these wherever you want. Some people prefer to just trim their clips and remove the mask when it's not being used, just so that there's no accidental interference. Or another way to set this first frame is use our mask expansion. So if we click on our mask expansion and we just drag it out, you can see that we now have a new border around that. So if you want to just like set that insanely high for our first frame before the mask, you can do that too. Cool, and now we will go all the way to our end frame here, to where it has just come off the screen. Those are the main points. If we watch and play it back, it wipes all right. You might have noticed that we can see some other things in the background. So what we want to do is just scrub through. Right here we have a bit of a slip. So we just drag our mask over there. Notice that our keyframes automatically set when we're making adjustments. That was actually pretty good. An important property of the mask is feathering. I base my feathering on how out of focus the object is. If our masked object is really out of focus, we can add a lot of feathering to kind of mimic the look. If our object is really sharp, we won't feather much. Since this tree is moderately in focus, we'll feather somewhere between 100 and 150. Now the reason why we set these keys so far out is so that our mask does not accidentally feather into our frame. It's always good just to be safe. Another super important element is adjusting the mask expansion. This allows us to equally adjust all of the pixels on either side of our mask. The feathering creates room on both sides of the mask. Reducing the expansion makes up the pixels that have been revealed from our feathering. So we just pull it back a bit. As you can see, we barely used any keyframes here. And most of our keyframes were just our in and out points. We didn't have to cover every single frame of this transition. We actually used very few. Now all we have to do is drag our mask clip up one video layer and put our second clip underneath it. I also just want to note that this is my preferred way of masking. So I keep the whole shot contained and drag it across, whereas a lot of people will have their shot and then they'll mask on the outside of the shot. I hope that makes sense. Let me just show you real quick what I mean. It's honestly a personal preference. There is also the option of inverting our mask. You can either create a mask to contain the whole clip and object like we just did, or we can make a mask that cuts out everything outside of the object and work in the reverse, creating a mask that cuts into our object and clip. Whatever you prefer. I found my way to be a little bit quicker and require less keyframes. As you can see, we didn't actually need that many keyframes, and if I wasn't talking so much, this method would have been really quick. Now that we have a handle on this, let's go into a more difficult situation. If you click on the sequence complex mask, here we have my friend Scott walking across the screen, revealing this new location. In all honesty, I typically would not put these two shots together for a mask transition, but I just love both of the locations and they're different enough to be a good example of this transition. Here's a little trick. If we scale into the image, we're gonna have less frames overall. He exits a lot faster. So we're just gonna do that. Let's set our markers. He's fully in the frame here. Fully out of the frame here. Here we go. We have a camera in his hand, which is going to make things a lot more difficult for us. I'm just going to do a rough outline first. For this one, let's do the opposite way. So let's mask out, just so that you have an idea of how to do both. Grab our points, drag it up, and we're going to invert the mask here. Now I'm going to scale up because I want to put a few more keyframes in here. One very important thing to note is when you are assigning these keyframes, you want to remember what they represent. So this is the corner jacket one, this is the camera lens, that's the leg. I'll show you why those are important in a minute. Let's move to our first point and bring our mask over here. I'm going to line everything up based on the corner of his jacket because that's the only part of his body that doesn't move much. The camera's going to be coming in here, so we're just going to line this up nicely. This was the edge of the camera, so keep it close. And then this was our point for the leg. Cool, and now let's move forward close to the end. We still have the corner of the jacket there. Move our camera point here. And just for the ease of us, our masking, let's just move that down. Keep that boot out of there. And let's move our points off the grid so that they don't come into our frame by accident. As you can see, our points are constantly changing, which is why we do not start off with a simple shape and then move to a complex shape, because it would just get confusing for the computer and make everything a lot more difficult. My favorite strategy is just to mask the really complex in-between frames. We don't have to go frame by frame. We can kind of just pick the in-between frames that are most important. Premiere will make predictions, animate our masking for us in between our keyframes. There's a lot of changes going on here, so we're gonna have to do this by hand. Make sure you are being very accurate with these masks because they will affect all of the in-between keyframes. So again, we'll watch. As you can see, we're getting a lot closer. There is a giant issue right there. So we'll find the in-between 2 points right here and dive back in. This is honestly just about having patience. But you see how that one frame just fixed all of these other ones for us for the most part? Let's fix the starting point for us and then set our ending. Create some room for feathering. We are so close. And there we go. That's actually really clean. I'm really happy with that. So because our object is relatively in focus, we're not going to go too crazy on the feathering. We can expand the mask a little bit if we want, just to clean it up. Remember, we are inverted, so we are going to expand. Before we were retracting our mask, now we want to expand it. And just like that, we have our complex mask. Now I can let you in on a little secret. If you feel like your mask is already going to have a ton of keyframes, there are some shots that, just look like they're going to take a very long time and it's really obvious. You can use this button right here. I don't typically use it, but I'm going to teach you what it is because it can be extremely useful. And why not at least try it a couple of times and see if it works with your style. Premiere will automatically track this mask for you. Crazy, I know. The only reason why I didn't bring it up first is because I wanted you to understand the basics of masking before you rely on the computer to do it for you, in case you get into a situation where Premiere just can't handle the mask. As you can see, there is a play forward, a play backward, and then single frames. If you hit play, it will try and track the rest of the clip, either forwards or backwards. The main issue is that if it messes up one frame, it's likely going to mess up the rest of the mask, following the first mistake. And if you do the single frame, you can track it frame by frame. This is a super helpful tool, don't get me wrong, but if you're going frame by frame, even if it's automated, you're still going frame by frame. Whereas, as you've seen in our other methods, we try to skip as many frames as we possibly can. The human eye doesn't pick up on too much, so as long as the movement looks right and it flows and it's feathered, and there's a bit of blur on it, you can really sell it with very little. The final way to do this, no real masking to it. This is called an in-camera transition or an in-camera wipe. If you have two clips and one of them wipes away to black, whether you put it behind a wall or an object where, light just can't get between that object and your lens, and then you start your next scene in a very similar position where you're behind an object and then you come out into the scene, you can just cut those two together. That is a very strategic way to do this transition without having to create any masks at all. This method is going to require very specific shooting. I've also attached clips for this. This way you can see what I mean. If you didn't completely remove the light from your scene, that's also fine. If you have a few shots that are going in the exact same motion and you have objects in between, sometimes you can just cut random objects together, and it happens so quickly that a lot of people don't even realize. As mentioned before, stick around to the very end of the video if you want to see some behind the scenes on how to shoot specifically for these transitions, because if you shoot these properly, there should be little to no editing involved. As I mentioned before, if you have a couple of clips that have similar lighting and motion to them, like these two, you can sometimes just piece them right together. So if I line these up properly, it looks like a wipe transition, but I literally don't have to do anything. Let me color these in two very opposite colors so you can see where the clips change. So because an object crosses the screen here, within 1 or 2 frames you can easily make a switch. The human eye really can't pick this up that well. So as long as there's something that comes across the screen, if you're really lazy, you don't even have to finish the whole mask. Crazy. The motion of the shot is so important to sell this. Improper motion will look insanely awkward. You know, if you're doing a really fast wipe transition to a shot that's not moving, or if you're wiping to the right and your next shot is going left, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't look good at all. We can work around that in post-productions with effects like horizontal flip. So if your shot's going to the left, you click on horizontal flip and it will now go to the right, and you can use it in your transition. That'll work as long as there's not text in your video. As promised, let's give you that bonus and talk about some quick ways on how to make every transition look that little bit better. Tip number 1, repositioning. Now, I know that sounds like the tip that I gave in my 5 tips video, but it's kind of different in this scenario. You can reposition your clips to do less masking. So think of it this way. Once our object is masked, there is literally nothing on the other side of it. So there's no reason that we need to keep it moving at the rate that it was already moving, unless it looks unnatural. We can set our position here, and we can pull this off screen as fast as we want. We could pull it off right here. So if we're running, it's gone. So look, we eliminated all the need for any future keyframes from here onward. As you get into more intricate wipes, you can be saving a ton of time and a ton of keyframes by moving. You reduce the amount of screen time that this transition is going on for. This could reduce the amount of masks that you do in half. Tip number 2. On top of that, we can add a blur. There's many different blurs that you can add, whether you're doing Premiere or After Effects. You can add something like a directional blur and just create this blur between these 2 clips going the exact same direction as the clip or the object, and it'll just really help it sell that little bit more. Let's drag on our adjustment layer, and what we want to add is a directional blur. Crank up the blur length just so we can see which direction it's facing, and we'll move it left to right. Obviously, we're not going to go that intense. Maybe like a 40. And what you might notice if you put on too much blur is you start to lose the sides a bit. So we're going to use our transform under distort, and we're going to set keyframes to mimic the blur length, and we'll scale up our image at the exact moment that our blur occurs. And now our corners are good. And finally, depending on the shot, we could be using lumetri color to help us. If we are swiping behind an object and it's not cutting to black, we can keyframe the exposure right down so that these 2 clips can now look like they swiped right into black. It is not a black jacket and there's still a little bit of light leaking. So what I can do is I can just ramp the exposure down so that it looks like I'm just cutting right up against his back. This is a good opportunity to use an exposure ramp. We have 2 very similar motions. We're moving left to right, behind the back, and we're revealing. Now, the jackets are completely different, as we can tell. So there's a couple of things we can do here. We could try to adjust this green a bit, but this is already an exported file, so like it's just not gonna work so well. Make it a bit more teal. We could try desaturating this one a bit as well. So at least they're a little bit closer. But the main thing that we can do here is do that exposure ramp. Use an adjustment layer. We can do that. And right here, we can set our exposure and just bring it right down. Then obviously we would want to reset. And there's kind of like a rough idea. The motion of these shots don't match insanely well. This one could actually be a lot faster. So maybe if we retime this, it might look a bit better. Alright, so it should start around here. Another thing you can do if you really want to sell it is bring down the highlights and the shadows, because that's the more realistic way of adjusting exposure. And there you go, it sells it a bit better. This tutorial is the beginning of a very useful tool that is an essential building block to many of the effects that I do. The majority of my effects have some sort of masking involved in them. Oh, and by the way, here's a teaser of my new video that I'm going to be dropping hopefully next week, if not the next one. It is very intense. It has a lot of masking in it. I know people liked it in the India videos, so I brought that style back for this one. I think it's really cool. Let me know what you think. I'll be dropping that soon. When you're doing transitions, you really want to try and make sure that you are shooting for the transition just to make the back end of editing a lot easier on yourself. When you are shooting for a wipe transition, you want to place yourself near or behind an object. You can even bring an object with you to wipe in front of the camera. As you can see, I positioned myself beside an object. This object is a stoplight pole. There's a preview in the bottom left of the screen. What I'm doing is I'm setting up for a shot, and as soon as I feel that I have the shot that I will use, I do a clean, quick wipe across. I do multiple takes to make sure that I have enough options that I'm happy with. And here we have a point of view camera angle doing a wipe transition. I set up, I set focus, and then I swipe across the back, leaving an opportunity to wipe. I set up for a second shot and wipe a bit closer to the back for variation, and then finally a final wipe. And that is essentially all there is to it. Cut two of those shots together, you have an in-camera wipe transition. There is still a lot of learning to do on this topic, which is why I dedicated an entire micro course to it, to give you the entire walkthrough on how to do this in every single situation, how to create this transition when there was no possible way, and how to just make all of them look way better. I really hope this was helpful for you. Smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.